I want to thank you for joining us in our podcast. Today we're studying out of the book of 1 Corinthians, and we're in 1 Corinthians, the 14th chapter, and we're going to start with verse number 32. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard a person say, I just couldn't stop. God's wanting to use me. He's wanting to use me in the gifts, and I just can't control it. Well, let me just say this to you. Either they don't understand, or they are under the operation of another spirit. Now, there's three different types of spirit. There's the human spirit, which can be very strong. There's the Holy Spirit, which is what we should all be seeking, and then there's evil spirits. But if you find a person and they're saying, you know what, this unction came on me and it was so strong I just couldn't control it. That's not what the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians, the 14th chapter, verse number 32. Let me read it to you. The spirits of prophets are subject to the prophet. What's he saying? You have control. The prophet has control. If a prophet is at a point where he says, I know somebody else is prophesying, but I just had to get up and say it. Well, that means something is not right. And be very wise in your understanding and in your judgment of that person. Because the spirit of a prophet is under the control of the prophet. The prophet can wait to deliver the prophecy. He can wait. He can let it cook. He can let it, he can let it perk for a while, and maybe that's what it needs. Maybe it just needs the right timing in the service. But the spirit of a prophet is subject to the prophet. In other words, that prophet has the ability to either speak or to remain silent. And that's what the Apostle Paul is talking about. He's talking about having prophets operate so that the church, number one, can learn, going back to verse number 31, so that they can learn and so that they can be exhorted. Now, the word exhorted actually is the parakaleo. It means to receive comfort, to receive instruction. That's why we need to have order in the church. And again, Paul is not saying do away with all prophets. No, what he's saying is there needs to be an order in the prophets, in the way that they present what they feel God is saying to the church. Now, 1 Corinthians 14, verse 33. For God is not the God of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints. God is not the God of confusion. Now, confusion means of turmoil. It means of unstable commotion. Let me ask you a question. You ever been out on rough seas? I remember taking a ship in the I think it's the Sea of the Philippines is what it's called, and it was rough. I mean, it was the waves were coming over the bow of the ship, and it was up and down and round and round. It was a rough sea. You know what? I did not appreciate my overnight accommodations on the deck of that ship in rough seas. And let me tell you something. People as a whole do not appreciate turmoil. Why? Because turmoil makes them fearful. Turmoil makes them to experience something that doesn't make them at peace. And you see, the Apostle Paul is telling us here, he's telling us God doesn't cause all this confusion in the Corinthian church. That is not God. Confusion is not God. God is not the God of confusion. But then he adds these three words, but of peace. Now, what does this word peace mean? It's not only tranquility or calmness, but it actually means a welfare state, a state, not a welfare state as far as getting checks from the government, but a state of being in welfare, a state of knowing that God is in control. A state of knowing that the love of God, you see, the love of God and the peace of God flow together. And when everything is done properly in the church, you know what happens? There comes a peace over the people, a peace that says, you know what? No matter what's going on the outside world, I have peace on the inside. God is not the God of confusion, of turmoil. God is the God of peace. And then he says, as in all the churches of the saints. What does he mean, all the churches of the saints? He's saying all the churches are experiencing peace, welfare. How can he say that? They're in the middle of persecution, many of them. How can you say, Paul, that all the churches are experiencing peace? Because peace is never conditioned on the outside conditions. It's always conditioned on the conditions of a person's heart. God is not the God of confusion. If you feel you're in a church service and you feel like there's a lot of confusion going on, number one, check your own heart to make sure that it's at peace with God. And number two, check the surroundings. Check the atmosphere that's in the church. Is it at peace with God? Is it a peaceful, calm situation? Is it a situation where you can grow, where you can be exhorted, where you can learn? That's what the Apostle Paul is telling the church at Corinth. And now moving on into a subject that we're not going to complete today. The Apostle Paul moves on and he moves on, and we need to understand that the context is that there's not confusion in the church. That's so vitally important. When he addresses women in the church, he is not addressing women to put them down. He is not addressing women to say, you can't do that in the church. This is a men's only leadership church. That's not what the Apostle Paul is talking about. The Apostle Paul is talking about having peace in a church service. He's talking about not having confusion and a lot of people speaking in tongues, a lot of people prophesying, and a lot of people doing all kinds of things, and a wife yelling over to her husband, hey, what did he say? Now, we're going to pick up here tomorrow, and we're going to talk about a woman's role in the church. So join us, if you will. Thank you for watching us today.